Today let's learn about intake air temperature sensor. As the name itself suggests, here we are measuring the temperature of intake air. In this video we will learn how this sensor works, why do we need this sensor and the types of this sensor. As we all know, engine oil is important for the lubrication of the engine internals, that is, keeping the friction between the moving components as little as possible. That is, it helps in reducing friction between the engine internals, such as piston, piston ring, cylinder wall, camshaft, crankshaft. And the qualities of the engine oil depends upon the temperature, that is, its viscosity and flow rate depends on the temperature. If you look at any engine oils, it would have something like 10W30, 10W40, that is, each type of engine oil works in a certain temperature range. That means in between those temperature range, it won't lose its viscosity or flow rate and you will get maximum performance out of the engine oil. That's why it is crucial to select the type of the engine oil and the temperature range while buying. And to monitor this engine oil temperature, we use EOT sensor, that is, engine oil temperature sensor. Here in this diagram you can see an engine block EOT sensor which is connected to ECU, and this ECU is sending information to instrument cluster, and this EOT will be usually located in the oil sump. And the function of ECU is to keep monitoring the engine oil temperature at a certain frequency, maybe taking a reading every 10 seconds or 20 seconds and see if it is in tolerable range. And the qualities of the engine oil depends upon the temperature, that is, its viscosity and flow rate depends on the temperature. Now let's learn how EOT sensor works. As I have explained in the fuel temperature sensor, this temperature sensors usually contain thermistor inside them. Thermistor is an electronic component whose resistance changes depending upon the temperature. And there are two types of thermistor, that is, PTC and NTC. That's why we have two types of oil temperature sensor. One is PTC and another one is NTC. If you look at the PTC graph, on the x-axis we have oil temperature in Celsius and on the y-axis we have voltage from 0 to 5 volts. And as you can see, as the temperature is increasing, the voltage is also increasing. That is, oil temperature and the voltage are directly proportional to each other. And when it comes to the NTC, oil temperature and the voltage are inversely proportional to each other. That's why with the increasing temperature, the voltage is decreasing. Also, we know if something is wrong with the sensor, ECU will give an error code. When we get the error code, we can test this EOT sensor in multiple ways. First, we can check in our OBD2 scanner and use the real-time information or live data to see if we are getting any response from the EOT sensor. And the next method is we can use our electronics tools such as multimeter and oscilloscope. First, let's look at resistance method. That is, since it's a thermistor, we can measure the resistance across its terminals when the engine is cold, and we can measure the same. Start the car, let it run for a few minutes so that engine oil gets warmed up, then take a measurement again and compare the resistance. There should be a change in resistance between initial reading and the final reading. The second method is voltage method. Note, while checking in the resistance method, the sensor must be removed from the wiring harness, and during the voltage method, the sensor needs to be connected to the wiring and you need to back probe it. Now you need to repeat the same experiment. Now read the initial voltage when the engine is cold and compare it with the voltage when the engine is hot. You should have some variation in it, otherwise EOT sensor is faulty. Also, the error can be related to the wiring harness. That is, wiring can be cut by a rat bite or water damage or a weak wire. This we can use a continuity method or resistance method and check the wiring continuity from the ECU connectors till the sensor connectors. Also, there is a possibility the sensor wires may be short to ground or short to VCC. Now if you are using the oscilloscope, we can see the real-time changes in the voltage as the temperature increases. Now let's understand symptoms of faulty engine oil temperature sensor. First one is, as soon as there is a fault in the sensor, MIL lamp, that is malfunction indication lamp, will turn on, along with the engine oil temperature warning lamp. In some car, it will go to limp mode, that is, ECU will restrict the engine to a certain RPM like 2500 or 3000. It will not allow the engine to rev beyond that RPM to protect the engine. And in some cars, the ECU will stop the engine and it will only start after clearing the fault code. Next one is, engine might start overheating. This you can observe in your coolant temperature gauge, and if you continue running the engine in this condition, it might lead to permanent damage, that is engine seizure. And you can even observe rough idling and poor performance due to the engine overheating. That's why if engine oil temperature sensor warning comes up, you should treat it seriously and get it checked or fix it yourself. Now let's see what happens if you ignore those warnings. First one is it will lead to permanent engine damage. That is, because of overheating and less lubrication, the engine internals will be stressed, and we also know when mechanical components are subjected to heavy friction, it will start wearing out and it will lead to permanent engine damage. If the engine oil is running at a higher temperature, its viscosity decreases and also the flow rate decreases. Thus, the performance of the engine oil decreases. Thus, there will be damage to engine internals such as piston, piston ring, camshaft, crankshaft. And we know when mechanical components are subjected to heavy friction, it will start wearing out. Also, this will in turn lead to lower engine life. That is, you might have to replace the engine internals before the scheduled service, and it will start consuming more amount of fuel. With a little bit of precaution and knowledge, we can avoid the heavy service bills. I hope you understood my explanation on engine oil temperature sensor, and if you learned something, please do like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.